FOMO.
My name's Patrick McGinnis, and I'll admit it, I have FOMO. And since you're here, I'm going to bet that you do too. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. If you learn to channel your FOMO productively, you can make the most of every opportunity while keeping your sanity in the process. This is FOMO Sapiens After Hours, the snackable show about how you can make FOMO a force for good. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of After Hours. I have a very special guest for you this week, and I don't always have guests, but I read her new book, which is called The Good Boss, 9 Ways Every Manager Can Support Women at Work. And I said, you got to come on After Hours. And my guest today is Kate Eberly Walker. Now, Kate Eberly Walker went to undergrad with me, been a friend of mine for a long time. She has seen me dressed on Halloween like Alex P. Keaton. And so she's laughing. I can see you laughing. And so we're not going to talk about that today, but we're going to talk about the new book because when Kate told me she was writing a book, I thought this is going to be a good one. So we're going to talk about the book, and I just want to bring you in, Kate. Kate, welcome to After Hours.
Thank you, Patrick. Nice to be here. I did want to ask, I just did my 3rd appearance on another podcast, and they sent me a refrigerator magnet. So I was wondering what I get for doing my 3rd FOMO Sapiens appearance.
3rd FOMO Sapiens appearance, you get, I'm not going to tell people any of your Halloween stories. How's that?
That's a really good deal for me. I'll take it.
Okay, there we go. Well, it's great to have you here. So tell us, just to get started, why did you write this book?
I wrote this book because I felt like there was something wrong with the approach to mentoring and developing women. So once I became a CEO, I started getting flooded with asks for advice. Some of it was from young women saying, how did you make it to the C-suite? What should I do? How can I progress in my career? But I also got a lot of requests from guys that I knew, CEOs, leaders of companies saying, oh, I'd love for you to come and speak to the women in my company. I feel like I need to do more to support them. And, I'd say, well, yeah, I would love to come speak to the women in your company, but like, you should speak to them too. You can do this too, and you can support women. And, the more I thought about it, I just felt like there's this whole thing of we look to women to support women and women to pay it forward. And that was totally how it happened for me. I went to work for a female CEO, and then she supported me in becoming her successor. And then for my next CEO job, I got to know a female board member who advocated to bring me in. And that's great. And we all, women definitely want to help other women, but there just aren't enough of us in CEO and board roles to really make an impact to the level that I think we all want to for women. So I decided, well, I want to write an advice book that is for everyone, maybe men most of all, because 2/3 of all managers are men, to show them, there's really a lot of ways, a lot of simple, authentic ways that all of you can be better supporters and managers of women too. So that's the book that I wrote.
It's interesting. I just had a conversation before this with our mutual friend, Jason, about the fact that if you go to the websites of leading private equity firms and VC firms, and it's there aren't many women there. And,
right.
And so if men don't read a book like this and learn how they can be supportive, you can't simply just say this isn't, I don't know what to do. The women should support each other and I'm not going to figure it out. Of course you need to figure it out. Everybody who's listening, all you men out there, we can do it. So we read the book, we will read the book, but tell us, just get started. What does a good boss look like and what does a bad boss look like?
So I think it starts with, from the perspective of an employee, you should like your boss. You should enjoy spending time with him or her. I had those bosses where you'd see them walking down the hallway in the office and kind of secretly hope they weren't coming to your desk and maybe breathe a sigh of relief when they walked into somebody else's office. That is not the feeling you want. So you don't have the right boss if you're a little uncomfortable, a little nervous, a little bit not yourself when you're talking to them, or if you just don't have fun talking to your boss. So I think, it's all about human connections, and you're spending a lot of time at work. You want to be your full self, so to speak. So if you don't feel like you're being yourself, if you don't feel like you really like spending time with your boss, I think you've something's wrong there. And I think then, the next thing that I look at is, do you have somebody who is doing stuff for you proactively, or, making future promises that aren't necessarily to come to be? For example, my good bosses just gave me raises. I didn't have to work up a big pitch for why I deserved one or what I wanted. They'd surprise me and be like, you've been doing a really great job, and I want to recognize it. And here it is, whether raise, promotion, those types of things. And then, the bad bosses are the ones where you do have to put all of that work and time and effort into asking for something, only to often get told, I'll think about it, I'll look into it. And then maybe they don't come back to you at all. You have to ask again. Or maybe they say, I can't pull that off for you right now, but give me 6 months and we'll make it happen. Those to me are bad boss signs that you don't really have an advocate.
Yeah. Indecision, not being transparent, having FOMO, not good. Now, this is I guess I'm going to bring up Jason again, because Jason told me when he was reading the book, there was one thing he really liked and struck with him that was a great handy thing, which is about calling people by their names. Which can seem, it's one of the, why don't you tell what you wrote? Because I think this is one of those things that it's so easy to do, but we forget. So talk about that.
Yeah. So it's calling someone by their name. It starts with the really basic that you would think you don't have to talk about. Of course, everyone should get names right, but it is amazing how often people don't. They call somebody, Jenny instead of Jen, or if they're writing in an email, maybe they, spelled the name wrong. I give the example of a woman in my office whose name is Crystal, starting with a K. People always write it with a C. And, the problem with that is it shows that whoever is doing that, whoever got your name wrong, didn't really listen to you, didn't really pay attention, doesn't respect you enough to make sure they get it right. Because, when people respect someone, they make sure they get the name right? Nobody's getting the president's name wrong. So, I think it starts with that really basic, get the name right, say it right, spell it right. But then it goes into terms of endearment. It is shocking to me still how often men will address women in work context as honey, sweetie, young lady. I tell a story in the book of the time that I'm still really mad about when someone called me young lady in a meeting when I was already a CEO. I was not a young lady. I was in my 40s when this happened.
Wow.
And so, so that's something that there's a stat I share in the book that in a survey of managers, 41% of managers said they thought it was okay to use terms of endearment in work, but 75% of women surveyed said it is not okay. So there's, I like to use what I call the Janet Jackson rule, which comes from the epic song Nasty. No, my first name ain't baby. It's Janet, Miss Jackson, if you're nasty. That covers everything that you need to know. Her name's Janet. It's not baby. Don't call her baby. And if you really want to convey respect, use the last name, because last names are a big thing too. Men are actually more than 50% as likely to be called by last name only in the workplace. And that can be, a collegial thing, that can be a respectful thing, comes through. And, students are more likely to refer to male professors by last name only. Political pundits are actually over 100% more likely to refer to male politicians by last name and female politicians by first name. So there's all of this data out there that people use that last name only, hey, McGinnis, much more often with men than they do with women. And there's a loss of respect there. So my one exception to the get her name right, use her whole name, use her full name is if you want to go with the last name nickname, that is actually a great gender equalizer.
I like that. Words matter. And I'll just tell you one thing. You can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for dinner. Just kidding. That's terrible. Sorry, everybody. Sorry for that. All right. So, Kate, one last question for you. Say you were stuck in a bad boss situation. You're dealing with somebody who is difficult. How do you change that dynamic?
So I actually suggest going around them. ask someone else in the organization. Doesn't have to be their boss, doesn't have to be that literal or that bold of a going around, but ask someone else in your company who you think cares about you, who's rooting for you, who sees your value, for their advice. First and foremost, I'd start with advice on what you could do to, get more opportunities, to be considered for more projects, for a promotion, whatever the thing is. And then, based on that advice, if it feels right, ask them if they could help you, if they could advocate for you, and, ultimately get yourself out of the bad boss situation. And, I think sometimes people get a little tripped up if they make it too personal and make it about like, I don't want to work for this person. I say, a lot of people will be willing to help you and support you if you keep it focused on the productive side of, what I want is to work hard. What I want is more opportunities to do that. How can you help me get the opportunities, as opposed to how can you help me get away from that other person?
That is what we call on this show entrepreneurial decision-making. I love it. All right. The book is The Good Boss. You can find Kate at her website, which is kateeberlywalker.com. And Eberly is spelled Eberle. And she is on Instagram at CEO Author Mom. Kate Eberly Walker, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
FOMO. Want more of FOMO Sapiens and After Hours? Head over to FOMOSapiens.com, where you can listen to past episodes, learn more about the show, and find out how to advertise. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis and on Twitter at PJ McGinnis.